Welcome to Clicks and Bricks Podcast. We talk about the entrepreneur mindset.
If you get one shot at this, what kind of shot are you going to take?
If we forget who we are, they're going to forget who you are.
You've got an adversity story that's out of this world.
Everything from that Main Street brick and mortar to that billion-dollar manufacturer.
Welcome back to Clicks and Bricks. My name is Ken. I'm talking to Dr. Danny Brassell today. I think I said that right. Probably wrong.
No.
Who will correct me, I promise. Danny, how you doing today?
Fantastic, Ken. Thanks so much for having me on. More importantly, thanks for spreading some joy in the world. We need a lot more of you, my friend.
Thank you so much. It is not always easy, but it definitely puts a smile on my face. I find that if I can start the day with a smile, I can keep it going longer. It's the last second that helps your next second. Danny, before we jump into the interview and we get to know you a little more in detail on what your businesses do, can you tell the audience just who you are and what got you fascinated with going down the entrepreneurial journey?
Well, Ken, that's a loaded question. Well, if I was going to write an autobiography, it would probably be called Pivots, because I feel like I've already lived 9 lives. 30 years ago, I was a journalist. I covered President Bush Sr. in the 1992 presidential election. I loved my job. I got to meet every editor of every major daily, and one editor offered me the city beat for $16,500 a year. Meanwhile, a friend told me they were hiring teachers in South Central Los Angeles for $25,000 a year. So I became an educator for the noblest of reasons, Ken, for the high pay. And eventually, I actually fell in love with teaching. I've taught all age levels, from preschoolers all the way up to rocket scientists. I can make that claim because I used to teach English as a second language to engineering students at the University of Southern California. And in 2005, my wife and I attended a real estate seminar, which turned out to be a scam, and we lost everything. And I could give you the woe is me story, but I'm a positive person. I learned a lot from the experience. First of all, I learned that my wife is my soulmate. I put her through the ringer and she stood right by me. She's an incredible human being. Second of all, I learned money is not everything, because you can lose money just like that. Third, I try not to judge other people, because if I was somebody who looked at what I had done, I would have said, well, you deserve that. But now I realize, unless you know everything about a person, you don't really know anything about a person. Fourth, I became a Christian, which I'm always embarrassed to admit. It took a catastrophe to bring me there. But the more I read the Bible, I realize I'm not the first screw up to find Jesus. And fifth, I didn't want to file for bankruptcy. And my accountant said, well, you have to make this much more money this year. And so I started speaking on the side, and I hit that number right on the number. Well, the next year, Ken, he gave me a much higher number, and I hit that number right on the number. So in year 3, I thought, well, maybe I should set a higher number. And basically, during one of the worst economic downturns in American history, I was able to build up a highly lucrative speaking business, which eventually attracted the attention of a lot of famous people and companies who started begging me to coach them. And I got to confess, Ken, I really resisted coaching at first, because you need to know this about me. I've always had a very high standard for my students. I won't let you fail. I will be on your back, holding you accountable until you succeed. Well, now that I work primarily with entrepreneurs and C-suite executives and business owners, I find they're highly motivated. They do the work, and it's probably been the most gratifying thing that I've ever done in my life. And so I know that we're speaking to a lot of entrepreneurs. That's one of my businesses. I still speak. You and I were talking earlier. One of my businesses, I have the world's top reading engagement program, which in just over 2 months shows parents how to get their kids to read more, read better, and most importantly, to love reading, because I find that schools do an adequate job of teaching kids how to read. But the question I always ask people is, well, what good is it teaching a kid how to read if they never want to read? I teach kids why to read, because I've never had to tell a kid, go watch TV. I've never had to tell a kid, go play a video game. And I never want to have to tell a kid, go read. I want them to choose to do it because they love it. And this also fits into your podcast, because I can tell you, I know plenty of readers that don't necessarily become effective leaders, but I can't name a single effective leader in history that is also not an avid reader. And so I'm all about getting people to surround themselves with positivity. I mean, I was watching this horrible show on TV last week called The News, and it totally depressed me. I like to be around people that are part of the solution, not part of the problem. And that's why I listen to your podcast, Ken, because you're part of the solution. You're giving people a platform, and you're inspiring people. So thank you, and kudos to all you do.
Thank you so much. That is a lot to talk about.
I know.
And I want to talk about the reading first, right out of the gate. I am neurodivergent. I'm diagnosed with a bunch of different neuro disorders, however you want to say that. So I was introduced to technology as a very young child, 1982. I've been on a keyboard since then. I've been through the entire ethos of technology and the internet, or at least modern technology, and I love it for everything that it is. Without a keyboard, I would not have graduated middle school. Right? There's just no doubt about that at all. And I did not learn to enjoy reading until I was much older. Now I read quite often, and how I read today is I couple audio and language together at the same time. So I'm listening to the audiobook while I'm reading it. And that gives me the ability, like a superpower, to read and comprehend, right? When I listen to it and read it at the same time, I comprehend the input at what most would say a ridiculous way. I'm curious, how do you think AI changes reading for us in the future? If you take a situation like me, that I'm not a typical reader. I did find love and joy for reading and really just consuming, really, more than the reading of it. I'm curious, and I think we should look into the future a little bit and think about, what does AI do to the enjoyment of reading? How do we teach with it? Are there new modalities that we can pull into? Like, I have not considered that particular thought process, but I think the people that get it their IQ is gonna skyrocket.
Amen, man. I love you. You and I are two peas in a pod, Ken. I mean, you need to know this about me. I grew up hating reading. My father was a librarian. I always hated the public library. It always smelled funny to me. The furniture was uncomfortable. There was always some elderly woman telling me to be quiet. There's always some freaky homeless guy over by the bookshelves thinks he's a vampire. I hated it. And it wasn't until I started teaching in the inner city, where I saw a lot of my kids didn't have the advantages I had growing up. I mean, I was very blessed, Ken. Both of my parents were in the home, and we were poor, but we always had food on the table. And my parents always read in front of us kids and to us kids. And we always had plenty of access to reading materials. And it got me thinking about, how do I get kids reading? Because reading is the foundation of everything. And I mean, when I was in high school, I had a teacher. She made us read The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. And no offense to the Nathaniel Hawthorne fans out there, but the book is basically, it's about this woman named Hester Prynne, who she commits adultery, and so she's forced to wear an A on her chest. And so I raised my hand in class one day and I said, "Can I wear a B on my chest? Because I'm so bored reading this book." This is what I always tell people. Our research is very clear on this. It doesn't matter what you read. What matters is how much you read. It doesn't matter if you're reading James Joyce or James and the Giant Peach. People who read more read better. I love that now you're a reader, Ken. I bet you had the same epiphany that I did. When I got my PhD, I was grinning from ear to ear. And my wife's like, "Why are you so happy?" I'm like, "Because from now on, I pick the books." And that's what reading should be all about. I had a little boy when I taught second grade, Kiara. And Kiara's first grade teacher told me, "Kiara don't know nothing." I'm like, "Well, thank you for that." Well, Kiara, who don't know nothing, this is a long time ago, Ken, he comes in my classroom one day. He's like, "Hey, Mr. Brassell, you see Barkley last night? He had 18 points and 16 boards." I'm like, "Thank you, Kiara." Because from that point forward, every day after lunch, Ken, I put Kiara on my lap. We'd read the LA Times sports page sitting together. And wouldn't you believe it? By the end of the year, he's one of my best readers. And all that kid ever read about was sports. Now, do I think Shakespeare is important? Yes, I do. But you got to get the kid hooked first. I always say this to parents. The little boy who only reads Captain Underpants is going to become a better reader than the little boy who refuses to read anything. Captain Underpants is the gateway drug to Shakespeare, but you got to get the kid hooked first. And the other part of your question I just found fascinating, because people always ask me this. So like, you know, technology. What about technology, Danny? I'm like, I'm all for technology. I was with a fourth grade teacher once, and she gave me this boy, Mario. And she's like, "Mario doesn't know how to read." I'm like, "Really?" I was with Mario for an hour, Ken. And in 1 hour's time, Mario texted about 10 of his friends. He sent some emails. He was surfing the web. He's highly literate. She's using a definition from 100 years ago. When people ask me, "Danny, ebooks or regular books?" my answer is yes. And they're like, "What do you mean?" Yeah. I mean, whatever works for you. Everybody's different. You and I are different, Ken. I mean, like, I'm a guy that loves old style books, but I'll give you the argument for ebooks. My wife loves her Kindle, and I'll give you three arguments for Kindle. I mean, first of all, she's from Singapore, and once a year we take the family to Singapore. And while I'm packing 20 books in my bags, she's packing a 1 pound, 6 ounce Kindle that has access to the entire world's library. She's much smarter than me. Second of all, we like to read in bed, and it drives her crazy because I always have to have my lamp on. She doesn't need a lamp because the Kindle illuminates itself. And third, I'm getting on in years. I mean, at this point, cut off my head and count the rings. I've been around for a while. I'm starting to lose my vision. And a lot of these books, it's difficult to read. I wouldn't have that problem if I read the Kindle because you can adjust the font size. You can do what you do, which is listen to it while you're reading, which is a fantastic strategy, by the way. One in here, I'll give your audience a quick little strategy I share with parents, their favorite strategy. It was interesting. There's all kinds of research that shows the more kids watch TV, the lower their reading test scores are in every country on the planet except for one. The country where kids watch the most TV is also the country that has the highest reading scores. It's Finland. And people always ask, well, how can that be? I'm like, well, because Finland makes really bad TV shows. And what they do is they import all these old American sitcoms like Welcome Back, Kotter and Good Times and Happy Days. And they have
That's
to
great television, Danny.
absolutely nothing but the highbrow stuff for me, Ken, I promise you. And they have to subtitle everything. So the strategy for parents, I always say, wait a sec, turn on the subtitles on my TV. If the show's in English and the subtitles are in English, what good does that do? I'm like, I understand, but that's a fair question. Let me ask you this question. Have you ever watched a show with subtitles and not looked at the subtitles? It's actually very difficult to do. Your brain is actually attracted to the text. This is one of the easiest ways I know to get kids reading. I work with a lot of dyslexic students, and people have to, and just so you know, all reading disabilities are curable. Far and away, the most undiagnosed reading disability is dyslexia. And people don't understand this, but dyslexic students tend to be very, very audio oriented. And so I always tell people the research shows that being read aloud to is just as good as reading on your own. Now, you do both, which is even better, but reading it and listening to it, I always tell parents, I'm like, let the kids listen to audiobooks in the car instead of listening to some newscast or something positive. And so I'm sorry, I'll get off my soapbox, but there's all kinds of ways. The way you get a person to become a reader is you make it fun. And the only way it's going to be fun is you read whatever you want. I mean, if you love quilting, read quilting magazines. If you love Missouri football, read about Missouri football. I'm telling you, you're going to do it because you're drawn to it all the time.
Yes.
That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to establish a habit.
I love it. I agree. It just goes back to the do what you love and you never work a day in your life. If you look at reading as work and you start reading the stuff that you love and that's all you read, and you do that as much as you possibly can, then you will enjoy reading more than just, I got to pick up this book. Danny, I do a lot of work, an obscene amount of work about self-identity. It is outside of data center work and video production. It's my third largest passion on this planet. My book, Reclaim Sobriety, is wrapped around sobriety, but it's really about self-identity. And the book that I'm writing right now, one of the two books that I'm writing right now, is all about finding your true self. I teach kids how to box. And when I first started doing that, I learned that I had to change how they see themselves as a person, that they're not weak, that they're strong. And I use the term gladiators with them. And I turn them from just goober kids, what I call them, into gladiators. And they go out and they compete on one of the biggest stages on the planet. I'm curious. I know that these labels like dyslexia or dumb or stupid or I can't read, how important is that mindset of I can't read going into this project? Do you have to change how they view themselves as well? Or is this really just learning the skill? Or is there more mindset behind it that most people don't even acknowledge?
Well, gosh, Ken, I commend you on your questions. These are fantastic questions. And so I would say it's a little bit of both, but you and I are both believers in mindset. I believe, a lot of people say garbage in, garbage out. Well, the speaker, Keith Harrell, he passed away, but he used to have an expression that says, no, garbage in, garbage stays. You have enough people telling you bad stuff. it starts sticking in your head. You start having that low self-esteem. But I also believe it works the other way as well. You tell a person some positive things enough, they actually start believing them. I mean, whether I was teaching my little ones or my older ones, all of my students at the end of the day had to hear the same refrain. I always said, remember, kids, education is valuable, but execution is priceless. Knowledge is not power. Only applied knowledge is power. Knowing what the right thing to do and doing the right thing are two very different things. So let's go out, do the right thing, and make this world a better place. I would walk around the classroom every single day telling, hey, Ken, man, you are so strong. You're strong-willed. You're strong-minded. You're a good boxer, man. I bet you're going to be boxing for the heavyweight title while you're trying to get your PhD someday. I believe you tell a kid stuff like that enough. I was very blessed, Ken. I came from a supportive home environment, lots of great teachers. When I stopped teaching, my mom was having a conversation with an old teacher of mine, and they didn't know I was eavesdropping. And the teacher, she said to my mother, she said, gosh, I'm so sad that Danny's left the classroom. He was such a good teacher. And my mom replied, but Danny's good at everything he does. That's the environment I grew up in. And I used to say this to the students. I'm like, you know what? Sometimes you need somebody else to believe in you before you believe in yourself. I believe in all of you. They only give me the best and the brightest. Let's go out and make this world a better place. That's what you're doing, by the way, telling all of your students that they're gladiators. You tell them that, they start believing they're gladiators. I'm a big believer in that. So again, if you're going to label a person, it takes just as much effort to label them something positive as it does negative. So here's a little strategy for everybody out there. Be Ben Kenobi. Stop being Darth Vader. Let's focus on the positive rather than the negative.
Absolutely. It's huge. It's everything. If you just go to Elon's first principle on everything there is, you get to mindset really quickly when it comes to how do I move forward? How do I create momentum? How do I achieve and thrive on this planet? One negative comment will overcome 100 positive if you let that. So let's talk about judgment. You said judgment. Not to judge others. It's a hard thing to do for a lot of people. And I think the first thing that you have to do is look internally and stop judging yourself, and then you'll stop judging everybody else, is my take on that. But you said judgment pretty, and had not judging other people as one of your cornerstones. Can you tell us a little bit about how do you get to that point? How do you just accept people where they're at? Because we all have this thought process of, well, if I'm talking to you and we're peers, then you should know everything that I know by default. And that's just not true.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of judgment comes from. How do you strip that? And why is it important to live a life that is accepting of other people's oddities as possible?
I love that question also, Ken. So this is one of my problems with social media. Everybody always puts their best foot forward. Hey, I'm in a mansion in Paris right now, drinking champagne and eating croissants. I mean, that's not reality for most people. I mean, when I first work with people on how to create a more engaging presentation, this is a strategy for all of your audience. Probably my number one strategy when people are putting together a presentation. Emphasize, stop sharing your successes. Start sharing your failures, because not everybody in your audience has succeeded, but they've all failed. And the more you allow yourself, Brene Brown, she's a wonderful speaker. She talks about vulnerability. I'm a big believer in that. This is what your sobriety book was about. It's, yeah, I'm working with a client right now, and we're writing his book, and he's like, well, my wife says this is depressing, because he's talking about all the adversity. I'm like, it's only depressing if you end it on the down note and let that define you, but you're not doing that. It's why I love the movie. You're in boxing. Everybody loves Rocky. Why does everybody love Rocky? He gets pounded, he falls down, he gets right back up. I mean, that's, people forget, in the very first Rocky, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. The night before he has to fight Apollo Creed, he's in bed with Adrian. He's like, Adrian, I'm going to lose tomorrow, but I don't care. All I want to do is go the distance with the champ. That's all I want to do. And if people actually remember the movie, he loses to Apollo Creed, but he went all 15 rounds, which was his goal. That was his goal, was to stay in it with the champ. And if people would just, this is why I tell people, get that negative nonsense out of your mind. Start focusing on people that get up. There's lots of people that most people stay down. I mean, I, I was I was at a convention a couple of months ago, and I feel bad because the first two speakers, they were both thought leaders who talked about enjoying the journey. And I said, well, I polled my audience. I'm like, here, who in here needs another thought? I'm not a thought leader. I'm an action leader. I believe in actually taking action, and I'm like, did you ever notice the people who say enjoy the journey have already succeeded? When they were broke and couldn't make rent and were starving to death, where they're like, man, I'm really enjoying this journey. I mean, what kind of advice is that? People need this podcast because they need to hear that successful people don't just have this point A to point B straight line where they succeeded overnight. No, they went from point A to point T, point L, point N. They went all over the place. They failed a lot. Failure is part of the process. It's only failure, though, if you let it define you. You got to get back up. I actually don't even remember what your original question was because I'm going all over on a tangent.
Yeah. A-
Um,
I have another question
Go for
that
it.
will go off on another tangent, but I just wanted to make a statement really quick. And I think the thought leaders should change. You should enjoy the process. That should be your goal. And it'll take you a while to get there. Appreciate the failures through the entire process.
Yeah.
You're not going to enjoy some of the failures. They suck. You're going to
Yeah.
cry a lot.
That's right.
Let yourself cry. You said earlier, and I'm going to pull this back out. I didn't pull it originally because I wanted to give a little space. Your mom said you're good at everything you do. One, what kind of pressure does that create on a person? And then two, I know that I do a lot of things and people think that it comes easy to me, and it really is hard. And I fail a lot. I fail more than most people could ever possibly imagine. I've recently started publishing those failures, like you said, on my current project, which I love. But I want to talk about that concept of when the expectation is high all the time, that creates this hustle culture. And it took you a while to realize that money's not happiness and you need to change some other things. So I just want to talk about those two things coupled together, and how do you break free from other people's expectations and come to the conclusion that, hey, I'm doing this for me. And if I do that, then the money, what I have found that if I just do the shit that I love doing at the highest possible level, my rent's paid. I've got food in my mouth, right? That's what I've come to the conclusion of. But I'd like to hear that he's good at everything he does. That seems like it could cause some damage. It could cause a lot of good. I just want to hear about that.
Yeah, it caused a lot of good. Both of my parents, I have a brother and a sister, and they always had very high expectations for us, but they always said, we don't care what you do, just be the best at it. Always give your best effort. Well, that was good. That was a really good lesson.
Not the best, your best.
Yeah, my best. As
I
long
think
as I'm
that's the
giving my
key.
best, as long as you give your best, you have no regrets. I mean, Bill Russell talked about it, even though I'm a Lakers fan, Bill Russell for the Celtics, I've read a couple of his books and they're just fascinating. The guy was just fascinating to me. But he said that sometimes he got so excited about the flow of the game and the high level of competition, he actually didn't care if they won or lost. He was just so happy with the effort, and it always drove him nuts if a ref would call a foul. He's like, you've stopped the flow of the game. And I always thought that was great. The other thing about Bill Russell, when he won the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the press conference was wonderful. So the Presidential Medal of Freedom is the highest honor you can get as an American civilian. And this obnoxious reporter sitting in the front row, he's chewing gum, and he's like, so Bill, is this the greatest honor you've ever received? And Russell responded, no, but it's a close second. And all of a sudden now everybody in the press room, they lean forward. They're like, well, what was the first? And he said, well, after I retired from basketball, my father sat me down. He said, Bill, I'm really proud to tell people you're my son. How to shut the press up really quickly. What an incredible story. I mean, my parents, I believe that there's a way to ask questions. When I'm working with teachers, they'll say, they'll ask the kids, are you going to college? I'm like, well, there's a difference between the teacher who says, are you going to college, and which college are you going to? My parents actually never even asked it that way. They asked all three of us kids, how high of a degree are you going to get? That's setting an expectation very high. I mean, I'm a Lakers fan. I'm not a Clippers fan because the Clippers, they're so excited if they make the playoffs. I'm like, the Lakers, if we don't win the championship, the season was a failure. I mean, people hate that I'm a Laker fan. I'm like, oh, I hate it too. I can't stand going to games because you can't really see much behind those 17 championship banners. Set that expectation high. And hey, it goes back. I'm not the creator of this. This is one of my favorite stories ever, Ken, was you get two salesmen and they both write down a goal. One writes down a goal that he's going to earn $100,000 that year. The other one writes down a goal he's going to earn $1 million that year. At the end of the year, the guy that set the goal for $100,000, he's bragging to the office. He's like, I made my goal. And the guy that set the goal for $1 million, he has to shrug his shoulders. He's like, I only made it halfway to my goal. Well, he still outperformed the other guy 5 times. Like, set that expectation high, have the discipline. That's the one thing I can control. I always tell, I'm a coach as well as a teacher. And I always want to coach the people with heart, not with talent, because talent gets lazy. Heart, they create powerful habits.
I would rather have a disciplined kid than a talented kid any day of the week. The talented kid for the first month is amazing. They're so much fun. They engage and they go. But if they don't have the discipline, the kid that walked in goofy and couldn't do anything 60 days later is far excelling the discipline. I see it time and time again. I'd rather have passion than skill every day of the week. You talked about this, and I've made this mistake in life on time and speed. There was a time in my life that I'm like, man, if I could just get $400 a week, I'd be set. And then that was $1,000 a week, I'd be set. And if I could just get $10,000 a month, I'd be set. And then, that keeps going. What I found is every time I set that number, I would get to that number and I would kick back and I put my feet up on the desk. I made it. And then 2 years would pass. Right? And I'd be like, shit, I've not done anything. I'm just cruising, which worked really well for me until 2017 when all the coal companies on the planet filed bankruptcy. And that's what I was doing, was building data centers for coal companies. And I had to change my game pretty quickly. I also lost my partner that year with throat cancer. You had a bankruptcy scare and you did a pretty big pivot and you've done that. Can you talk to us about that bankrupt? And I love how you said, my lawyer said I need to make this much money this year. And I said, I'll make that much money. And then the next year, and the next year, you kept doing that. I love that story. Can you tell us a little bit about, we did not file bankruptcy either. My team, we got together and we didn't. And it was one of the more challenging things I've ever done in my life. Almost a 10-year dig out. Can you tell us a little bit about the feelings and the emotion behind, I have to file bankruptcy or execute, and just what that story is? And can you just walk us through that for the people out there that, they're worried about, if I get into this, will I fail? Bankruptcy's on the table. That's a real thing, right? So I think it's important to let people know how that feels and then how to navigate through that. Because I had to do it too. And I'll talk to as many people that ever want to hear about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's dark days. You feel very desperate. I would encourage all of your listeners to watch the movie Apollo 13. One of my favorite scenes is when Ed Harris says, failure is not an option. I mean, one of my favorite, they have this one scene where he's like, okay, we got this square and we got to fix it. We have to make it sure it fits this circle. And here's the stuff they have on the spaceship. You got an hour. If we don't solve it, these astronauts die in outer space. And guess what happens? They solve it. They figure it out. Like, Christopher Logue, he's a British poet. He has this great little poem where it's like, come to the edge. It's too high. Come to the edge. We might fall. Come to the edge. And they came and he pushed and they flew. I say this to all my clients. Sometimes you just need a little push to get you flying. And again, I chose to look at that situation not as the worst moment of my life, but as the best moment of my life. Yeah, it stunk. And I know that there's listeners out there and they're struggling and they don't even see the light. I'm like, keep on going, keep on going. It's remember Rocky. It's only failure when you stay down. I watch inspirational movies. I read inspirational books. I mean, when you were talking about your goals for income, I just read this wonderful biography on Walt Disney by Neil Gabler, and Disney was just, oh, can I just sell this so I can be a cartoonist? I read another one about Dr. Seuss by Brian J. Jones. He's a great biographer. And Dr. Seuss was like, he was an advertising guy. He's like, oh, if I could just make 5,000 a month as a cartoonist, I could really do what I want to do. And it took him, people don't realize, it took him 18 years to become Dr. Seuss, to where he was selling enough books, and then he became this phenomenon. He's like one of the best selling authors of all time. But people don't know. Oh, they're like, oh, it's Dr. Seuss. No, it did. I had no idea how many times Walt Disney was faced with, you're done. You're bankrupt. You got nothing. And he had a decision to make. Do I do that? Or do I eat the canned beans and keep on pushing forward? I mean, James Dyson, his biography is one of the most inspiring things I've ever read in my life. He spent 15 years coming up with over 5,100 different models of the first Dyson vacuum cleaner. He finally gets the one he wants, and what happens? A couple of companies steal the patent, and they have the attitude, "Oh, you're a small guy. We have enough lawyers that sue us. Who cares? You're not going to be able to do anything." And he fights it. He fights it, and he fights it, and he's like, "I actually know the ending to the story. I'm reading the book. I'm like, oh my gosh, is he going to make it?" He stuck to it. He finally came through, and now the guy's the second wealthiest person in England. He has over $15 billion. And look at all the lives he's changed positively with the people he employs. I mean, this inspires me. And so for the people out there who are through those dark days, I'm like, you and I both know this, Ken. There's dark days. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
It's a battle.
I mean, I was suicidal at one point. Les Brown, wonderful speaker, great human being. He has a
Yes.
great line. He says, suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And I listen to that again and again. I'm like, he's right. There's a state called penumbra. Penumbra is that area between the darkness and the light. A lot of people are in that area. Choose the light. Don't choose the darkness. There are better times ahead. And this is why I love speaking, is because I love pumping people up, getting them to believe in themselves.
Absolutely. It's wonderful stuff. I love that you used Apollo 13. It reminded me of, and I just brought up my partner, Steve, who passed away in 2017, throat cancer. We started this company together, and he used to tell me, I was young. I was 24 years old or 25 years old when I opened my first data center, which didn't sound cool until 2025. So
You didn't
he
dress up
used to tell me all the time,
that as a kid for
we,
Halloween?
we were inventing this stuff as we were going, right? And we had some monster clients like MasterCard, Wonder Bread, and stuff like that back in the day. And, the internet is nothing like it was today or is today. So we were constantly having problems, and we were literally inventing what we do today. And he used to tell me a lot, and I would panic, and I had my own issues, and it was always high stress because everything was always on the table. And he would say, and he would use Apollo 13 or Columbia. And he would ask me, he's like, what do you think the astronauts were doing seconds before it blew? Do you think they were panicking and screaming and running around, or do you think they were working the problem? Right. So in business, when you're in a nosedive, the only thing you can do is remove the expectation of, I'm going to build this company to be a great company. I'm going to, you're going to work the problem every single day. And you might spend a whole day in your checkbook just trying to figure out how to move money around. You might do that for years, right? If you really, really want this and you want to be flying your own ship, right? If you want to have a job that nobody on the planet can fire you, then these are some of the things that you're going to have to do, right? You're going to have to face them with big boy pants and move forward. And there's going to be hard times. There's going to be bankruptcy scares. I went to my shareholders and said, the bank's telling me to file bankruptcy. And he said, we're not doing it. I'll fund the shutdown. When I told the lawyer that, and he said, well, why are you filing bankruptcy? I'm like, the bank told me I should. He's like, The bank tell you didn't have. The bank hasn't told you have to yet. When it is time to file bankruptcy, the judge will tell you that you have to. It's okay. You don't have to make that decision. Your decision is to sit down and work the problem until it explodes or is successful. That's it. That's
right.
the job of an entrepreneur. Or you can pivot. Danny, I got a question for you. If a superintendent handed you $100 per student to improve literacy, how would you allocate it across books, training, and parent engagement, and why?
Well, my reading program costs $1, so $1 goes for that. The other 99, I would allocate most of that towards letting the kid buy whatever they want to read. Comic books, magazines, newspapers. Everybody thinks books have to mean Dostoevsky, these long Russian novels. I'm like, well, if that's your thing, that's what you should read. But again, it doesn't matter what you read. What matters is how much you read. Just make it into a habit. And the way you make it, I mean, nobody forces me to read sports stories every day. I'm just fascinated by it. And it's the same reason I watch the Olympics. My wife,
A habit or an extracurricular activity?
yeah, it's something that I enjoy. It's something I'm like, oh, this relaxes me, and it's actually beneficial to me. I mean, and I'm actually not a person that says TV is a bad thing either. I mean, I think TV is a bad thing if you're, my sister, she watches nothing but all these real life crime dramas, and I'm like, ugh, that's just going to really make you paranoid and depressed all the time. Watch Apollo 13, watch documentaries, like watch Shark Tank, figure out how to write a pitch. That's actually meaningful. You should spend your time very wisely. So of the $100, I'd spend $1 on my reading habit program. We made it $1 because I wanted everybody around the world to use it. And so we're in 23 countries right now, and a lot of countries, $1 is significant. And so that's why a lot of American companies have taken it upon themselves to just buy the program for all the students at certain schools, either in the United States or abroad. And it's stuff like that, Ken. I mean, if you watch the news, they're going to tell you all the bad stuff. There are amazing things, amazing companies, amazing people doing great things behind the scenes, and they never take credit for it. And that's why I do what I do. I get to see the good in people, not the bad in people.
The news is the crap ring around the edges. It's not real. It's not society. It's not the world that we live in. It's the spin cycle crap that gets clicks. I mean,
Pure poetry, Ken.
Unfortunately, we're in the late stages of capitalism, and news is entertainment. It's not reality. It's a sad state of affairs. And I'm super excited about the future for us because I think, we're at a really amazing spot in mankind that I'm excited to be living through, and I'm glad to be there. Danny, I've had such a great time talking with you today. If somebody wanted to reach out to you and work with you directly, if it's, public speaking or get your reading program, can you tell us about, who those people might be and how they can reach out? I really want to get the URL out there for the $1 book program, but if they wanted to work with you directly, how would they do that as well?
Well, as a thank you for having to listen to all my stories and opinions, Ken, I wanted to give everybody in the audience a freebie. So if you go to freestoryguide.com, guide like a tour guide, freestoryguide.com, I'm going to give everybody the WellCrafted Story Blueprint. What this is the actual process I take clients through on how you can create your own well-crafted story. What this does for you is it takes the guesswork out of why am I putting this story here and what do I have to do here in my presentation. And what this means for you is the peace of mind that I have a presentation that's going to convert my audience into clients and actually take the next step with me. You get that at freestoryguide.com. If people want to get the reading program, they can just go to, I don't know, I have so many different websites right now, I can't keep track of them. But my personal website is dannybrassell.com. My last name is really easy to remember how to spell. It's spelled like Brassell. No, I never took any grief over that as a child. You go to 2 S's, 2 L's, Brassell, dannybrassell.com. We'll hook you up to the reading habit. And in just over 2 months, we show you how to get kids excited about reading, because the more excited you are to read, the more likely you are to read. And the more you read, the better you get. So you and I both know that. And again, Ken, I just think you're delightful. Those are actually some of the best questions. People always ask me why I do podcasts. I'm like, well, it gives me practice. I get reps. I get to learn how to respond to different questions. And I can honestly say you asked me 3 questions today nobody's ever asked me before. They were deep. They were great. You're a wonderful interviewer because you actually listen to the answers and follow up with really good questions. I commend you for all that you're doing.
Thank you so much. I practice more than people probably understand. Danny,
I
it's in the
understand.
point of the show. The Diary of a CEO is my favorite podcast. And Steven, at the end of every episode, asks his guest to write a question for the next guest. And I bought the deck of cards, and I've been having a lot of fun. I'm excited about this one. I've been having a lot of fun pulling these questions and asking my guests. So I'm going to ask you the question. You'll answer it. I'll do my best to answer it vulnerably, and then we'll ask the audience to answer it. This
Alrighty.
question is from Tony Hawk, one of my all-time idols in life. I got to grow up as him, a couple steps ahead of me in a way better career. When do you feel the most emotionally connected to yourself?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question?
When do you feel the most emotionally connected to yourself?
This is going to be it's going to sound like a pathetic answer, Ken. So I love the movie Chariots of Fire. It's pathetic. I watch this movie a couple of times a year about 2 white guy British runners in the 1920 Olympics. One is Jewish, the other one's Christian. The Christian, Eric Liddell, in the movie, his sister's pressuring him to go back to his missionary work in China. And so they're in Edinburgh one day, and he looks back at Edinburgh. He's like, wow, it's lovely. I'm really going to miss it. I've made my decision. I'm going back to the mission in China. And she gets so excited. He's like, but first I'm going to run in the Olympics. And she gets disappointed. He's like, Jenny, God made me for a purpose. And that's for the missions in China. But he also made me fast. And when I run, I feel his pleasure. I get goosebumps every time I hear that, Ken, because when I'm on stage, every now and then I say something that's brilliant. And I realize I didn't just say that. God just spoke right through me on that. But there's things I say every now and then. I'm like, there's no way I could be that funny. There's no way I could have thought of that on the spot. And so I am emotionally at my best when I'm on stage. I love getting people, when I'm working with people, a lot of trainers will teach people to talk about the most traumatic moments in their life. And I'm exactly the opposite. I'm like, I want you having fun on stage. Do you really want to talk about the worst moment of your life again and again? I want you getting people laughing. There's a great film, highbrow film called Monsters, Inc. In Monsters, Inc., at the end of that movie, they realize, wait a sec, laughter's more powerful than sadness. That's a great point. I believe there's plenty of misery out there. We just survived a global pandemic. Everybody's had a lot of bad things happen to them. I don't think we need to hear another sad story. I think we need to hear more stories about hope. And so hopefully that
Absolutely.
answered that question. Ken, I'm curious how you would answer. Tell me your answer on that.
This is a pretty tough one for me. I said earlier I have some neurodivergencies and I have dissociative disorder. So for me, when I feel most emotionally connected is when I feel the most in my body. And that is at about 3 minutes into an ice bath, when I've settled my heart, I've settled my body, and I'm fully connected, and I'm getting ready to, I'm in the last 2 minutes of that ice bath. That 2 minutes for me is a very connected spiritual place. And I like to get there on Sundays. I wish I could do it more, but no, I don't. If I wish I could do it more, I'd do it more. I don't do it more. I do it on Sundays. And evidently that's good enough for me. If you're watching the show, what makes you feel most emotionally connected to yourself? Go ahead and leave it in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Danny, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate you.
Thanks for all you do, Ken. God bless.